Hi, so we've got another glute workout for you, but we're going to work your glutes in different positions. So we're going to start off on our hands and our knees. You want your shoulders, your hands about shoulder width apart, and if you can, have your hands underneath your shoulders. If you struggle with wrist pain, you can always take your hands forward of your shoulders. You can always do it on fists if that's better for you. You can hold parallettes if you need to. You can even roll up a towel and rest that part of your hand on the towel just so that you're not in that full extension. And you want your knees underneath your hips. You're going to imagine that you're a table, so your back's going to stay as flat as possible. We're not going to do any arching in this position. We're staying here. You want to keep your shoulders away from your ears. They're not earrings, which means engaging your lats a little bit to keep them away from your ears. We want to think that we're pulling our tummy button back up towards our spine, not a full contraction, so really, really hard, maybe about 30, 40, 50%, enough to keep your back in that nice, stable position. Now from here, all we're going to do is we're just going to straighten, keeping our right toes on the floor, we're just going to straighten that leg out behind us, and then we're going to bring it back in. And we're going to keep doing this on our right. So we're keeping our toes on the floor for now. What I want you thinking about is when you straighten, you squeeze that bottom. So we really squeeze those bottom muscles and squeeze there. And again, squeeze. And again, squeeze. Now from here, we can come into where we're lifting our leg off. So it's only a little bit off the floor. And we're just going to, again, straighten. Now our foot's off the floor, there's more temptation to arch that low back. You've not got much hip extension, nobody has. So in order to get more range of movement, a lot of people will dip. That's not what we're doing here. I want you to keep your back as flat as possible. Imagine that I've got a glass of wine resting on your low back. If you arch that back, that red wine's going to go everywhere. Good. Keep going with that leg. So again, as we get to the top, we're squeezing there and coming back in and squeezing and back in and squeezing. So that foot and knee are staying off the floor the whole time. Still got our lats engaged, so our shoulders are away from our ears. The other thing I want you to think about is those bony bits on the front of your hips here. Got two lasers on them. I want you to keep those pointing straight down to the floor. So again, as we come up, we're not twisting. We're just taking that leg straight out behind us. Now we're going to swap sides. So we're going to keep those left toes initially on the floor. So we're just straightening that leg and squeezing that bottom. And then bringing that knee back in. And then straighten and squeeze. And come back in. And straighten and squeeze. And come back in. And again, not arching that low back. My glass of red wine is safe. Good. And then from here, we can hover that knee, and again, we can keep that leg off the floor. Keep that tummy button pulled back towards that spine, because it'll help you keep that good flat back position. You should really squeeze those glutes at the end to really get them working. Good. And again, thinking about those lasers on the front of our hips, pointing straight down to the floor. Good. Keep going. And again. And do two more for me. One. Last one. Two. Good. Okay, from here, we're going to do a fire hydrant. So I'll turn to face you. All I want you doing is taking that leg out to the side. It's just on your right. So we're keeping our knee bent and we're just taking it out to the side. Again, I don't want you trying to twist as much as possible. The only movement really should be coming from your hip. So you might find that one side you've got a bit more range of movement than the other. So that whole foot and leg is floated off the floor, and you're just taking it as far as you can, almost to the point where you feel like you want to rotate your hips to get a bit more range of movement. You'll probably get to a point where there's a block. Now what we can do here is take that leg and keep it there and hold it there, and then just do some tiny little pulses at that end of range. So we're just working into that glute med. Again, the lasers on the front of my hips are staying pointed straight down to the floor. My back's nice and straight. Keep going, keep going, keep going, and down. Then we're going to do the same on the other side. So again, we're just taking it out. My left hip doesn't move anywhere near as much as my right one does. Definitely feels a little bit tighter. But we're just moving out and in, and out and in, and out and in, and out and in. And then again, we can take it out and we can hold it there and keep it there. Keep those lasers pointed down to the floor on the front of your hips. Keep that back nice and flat, shoulders away from your ears, and just pulse that leg. Just pulse it a little bit. Really get into that end of your range. Really work. Really work. Good. Keep going. Keep going. Lovely. And then come back in again. Okay. From here, we're going to revisit one we've already done. So you're going to take that leg straight out behind you. And with your toes of that straight leg, we're going to draw a little semicircle. So a rainbow. So if I turn to face you, my leg is going out to the side and back in. What I really want you to think about is a nice slow arch coming in and going back out. So we're going out and coming back in. But again, keeping that tummy button pulled back towards that spine so that we're not arching that back too much. We want pretty much all of that movement should be coming from your hip. Nice and slow and controlled. We're not in a race, it's nice and slow. Really thinking about trying to draw that rainbow or that semicircle with that foot. And still trying to keep our hips square down to the mat. So those lasers on the front of our hips are still pointing down into the mat. Good. Do one more rainbow for me. Out and back in. And then we're going to swap sides. So again, that left leg comes out and those toes stay on the floor. And then it comes out and it comes back in. And it comes out and back in. And again, keeping that tummy button pulled back towards that spine. Trying to keep that back nice and flat. Really feeling those glute muscles working, those bottom muscles. Good. Nice and slow and controlled. If you're struggling with any knee pain, you can always do it with a soft knee. But again, the same principle applies. You want most coming from your hip. You'll feel it more in your hamstrings if you do it with a soft knee. But that could be good. Could be what you need. Good. And then do two more. One. Last one. Two. And back in. Good. Okay, we've got one more here. So, what I want you to do now, keep that tummy button pulled back towards your spine. Keep those shoulders away from those ears. And you're going to extend your right leg and just take it out behind you. And then you're going to lift your opposite arm and take it, float it up just as much as you can. And you're going to hold this position. Now here, I want you thinking that we're not trying to flare our ribs. So sometimes when you lift your arm up, again the temptation is to arch. Don't want you arching. You might be in a straight line, you might not. It just depends on your body and how you're feeling today. And then from here, we're just going to tap fingers and toes on the floor and come back up. But again, keeping that tummy button pressed back towards our spine so that we're not arching our low back and we're not flaring those ribs. And we're really getting that glute movement. Those glutes are working. Good. Keep going. One more. Bring it down and we're going to do all the same on the other side. So again, left leg comes out behind us and lifts off the floor. Right arm comes out in front of us. Again, keeping that nice, strong position there. And then we're simply going to tap our toes and our fingers on the floor and come back up again. Toes and fingers back up. toes and fingers, back up, toes and fingers. Good. Keep going. Keep working those bottom muscles. And then just hold. Hold. Imagine someone's trying to pull your foot away and trying to pull your arm away, so they're trying to stretch you as long as you can. Stay there. Good. And then come down. Okay, so we're now going to come down onto our backs. In this position, we want your feet flat on the floor. If you start with your feet together and then turn your toes out and your heels out, you end up in tram lines. Normally, for most people, you end up with your feet in a really nice position. Again here, we want to keep our shoulders away from our ears. We don't want any rib flaring, so my ribs do flare, so I'm just going to try and pull those down a little bit whilst also keeping my shoulders away. If you have a diamond, make a diamond with your index fingers and your thumbs. I want you to put your thumbs on your belly button and your index fingers pointing down. So we're in that position. And I want you to imagine in that diamond there's a marble. And I want you to just roll that marble down to your index fingers and then roll it back towards your thumbs. Down to your index fingers and back towards your thumbs. So all we're doing here is we're just tilting that pelvis, we're just rocking it. And then what I want you to do is find a point where that marble will stay right in the middle of your diamond. So it's not going to roll down to your fingers or to your thumbs. And normally that's quite a neutral spine. It will vary from person to person how much room they've got underneath their low back. With mine you could probably get a tiny bit of paper underneath. From here we're going to come up into a shoulder bridge, but what I want you really thinking about is peeling your back off the floor. So I want you to have your hands down by your sides and you're going to tilt that pelvis so that tailbone lifts off the floor, and then nice and slowly, bone by bone by bone, you're going to lift your back off the floor. And you want to come to a point where you're a straight line from your shoulders to your knees, so we're not overarching our back. I want you to take a couple of breaths in here, and then I want you to breathe out, and as you come down, I want you to lower your spine, again, bone by bone by bone, really tucking underneath, squeezing those bottom muscles to keep that pelvic tilt on, keep that tailbone off, and the last thing that comes down is your tailbone. When you come down, make sure that you've not let your ribs flare as you come down. So we're going to go again. So we tilt that pelvis and we peel that back off the floor, and we come all the way up here and take a couple of breaths in. If you struggle coming down, you might want to go up onto your tiptoes. You get more glute activation, and it will just help come all the way down, bone by bone by bone, nice and slow, nice and controlled. And so the last thing that comes down is your tailbone. Good. And again, tuck that tailbone underneath and peel that spine all the way off the floor. Come up to the top, take a couple of breaths. Again, if you need to, come up onto your tiptoes, just to squeeze that bottom a little bit more, and then curl bone by bone by bone by bone. Really nice. Good. Some people might not be able to get that segmental movement all the way down first off. I didn't used to be able to do it, so what I would recommend you doing is working into that position. So say you get to about here and then your back just collapses. Just work up to coming to there and then really trying to press, really squeeze those bottom muscles just to press down in that position. If you feel like you've got that really nice segmental movement, so you're peeling off and then you're coming nice and slowly back down, carry on. There's other ways we can progress this, so we can peel our back off, and here what we can do is we can straighten one leg and then bring it back down, and straighten the other leg and bring it back down. What I really want you thinking about when you lift one leg is that your hips stay level, and swap legs, because what can happen is your hips will dip, so sometimes it's good to put your hands on the front of your hips just to feel what your hips are doing. You want to imagine that there's a spirit line, spirit level across your hips, and it's not dipping, and then come all the way back down. And we'll go again. So up we come. Hands on the front of your hips to check you're not dipping, and come up and back down. if you find you do dip, before you lift off, really try and squeeze those bottom muscles and then lift that leg and back down. Squeeze those bottom muscles and then lift and bring that leg back down and then come all the way down. You can carry on doing that, or we can have a bit of a play around. So we come back up into this position, and then we want to dip our hips, but we're going to keep both feet flat. So we'll want you to think about trying to switch off your glutes on one side. So my left ones are still switched on, but my right ones are off, so my hips are dipped. And then squeeze them both back on again. And then drop your other side. And back on again. It's just really good for your body awareness and the activation of your glutes. Just to get thinking about that position. And come back down again. The last one I want to show you, again, is a progression. So instead of taking one leg off and having your knees the same level, you want to take one leg off and take it up. And then you bring it down, up, down, then your foot down. Up, down, up, and then down, and your foot down. And then roll all the way down. So again, peel your back up, lift up, down, up, down, foot flat. Point your toe to the ceiling, bring that leg so your knees are level, point to the ceiling, knees level, foot down, all the way down. And there you go. Again, good idea to do some glute stretches after that. So we've got our pigeon, which is always a nice one to do, or we've got our other glute stretch here, where you're pulling your knee to your opposite shoulder. Entirely up to you. Thanks.